Hi, my name is Dr. Rayshawn Ray, aiming to speak truth to power, and this is my daily thought. Can we finally put Oscar So White to rest? So this was a campaign because over the past couple of years, there haven't been any African Americans nominated for major awards at the Oscars. And to answer that question, can we put Oscar So White to rest? The answer is no, but it's not as simple as a yes or a no. So if we think about this particular year, I mean, we have Viola Davis winning for Fences. I mean, which was a phenomenal movie. I mean, we have we have individuals winning for we have Mahershala Ali winning for Moonlight, and then we have Moonlight winning for Best Picture. And what's fascinating, of course, you had individuals from La La Land come up. Warren Beatty thought, or actually he was kind of hesitant when he read it, that he had the right card, and the person who was up there with him said La La Land. They came up. They were 3 people deep into their acceptance speech, and then they realized there was a mistake, right? So as Jimmy Kimmel said, I think we could just blame Steve Harvey. I mean, Steve Harvey is just being blamed for everything nowadays. But besides that mishap, which was a major mishap, they corrected it similar to the way Steve Harvey corrected it at the Miss Universe competition. But what I want to talk about there's way more important than all of these other details, is what these winners mean this year for the historical significance of African Americans in film and their roles in film. So I want to highlight a couple of works. The main work I want to highlight is Dr. Matthew Hughey at University of Connecticut, sociologist who had a book come out called The White Savior Film. And in this film, he talked about that there are kind of 2 main tropes that we see in film, particularly when they involve black characters. And that includes white saviors, so whites coming in to kind of save the day. And then on the other hand, we have these magical Negroes. And so, I mean, if we think about a lot of the characters we've seen, I mean, they tend to fit into those particular categories. And you can read his book to see more of his analysis and how he breaks that down over time. Fascinating analysis. And I think there's also an addition we can make to this that comes down to victimization versus empowerment. I was telling people before the award show, they were like, do you think Hidden Figures is going to win? I was like, no. Do you think Fences is going to win? No. Do you think Moonlight is going to win? Moonlight could probably win. And the reason why I felt Moonlight could probably win, and Fences does fit into this category in a sense, but it's slightly different. I'll get to that in a second, because both were directed by African Americans. Very strong writing and scripts and manuscripts for these particular movies. Just to be frank, I mean, as pretty much all movies are that are nominated for an award of this caliber. I mean, I think that's the first thing. I mean, people are working extremely hard, and that's not to take away from anybody who ends up winning. This is more about potentially the reasons why other people lose, and then why some people win. So if we just think about this point blank, if we think about Sidney Poitier, who was the first African-American man to win for Best Actor in a Leading Role. He won for Lilies of the Field. And in this movie, he played a magical Negro, a person who nuns felt had came to save them, right? I mean, how much more magical do you get than that? I mean, and then if we think about Best Actresses in a Leading Role, I mean, we could see Halle Berry winning for Monsters Ball in 2001, the only one. I mean, what gets more victimizing than that? I mean, you have a woman whose son, who is struggling financially, whose son ends up being, I think he was hit by a car and killed, and then she ends up getting with Billy Bob Thornton's character. The whole point is that it's a classic victimization story. I mean, we can even look at all of the hoopla around Monsters Ball when it was winning, when Monique won for that. Classic victimization story. We can look at Denzel Washington winning for Training Day. Classic victimization story in the sense that he was fulfilling stereotypes as this corrupt black cop who was still into drugs and violence and all these things. Despite all of the great roles that Denzel has played, that is the one that he is a winning lead actor for. Now, there are some exceptions. If we take Denzel Washington's character in Glory, that was an exception. I mean, there are always exceptions. Exceptions do not mean that they actually dispel the pattern. In fact, exceptions simply prove that the pattern is indeed true when you kind of look at these characters. Even Viola Davis's character in Fences. Now, her role was phenomenal. Denzel Washington's role was phenomenal. But if we think about the movie, I mean, the movie was about a man who was past his prime in baseball when they finally integrated baseball. So he couldn't go pro. Felt really aggrieved by that. Ended up working as a sanitation worker, had been married for years, cheats on his wife with this young woman at the bar, has a baby, comes home with the baby after the mother of the baby dies, and then asks his wife to take care of the baby. I mean, how much more victimizing do you want? As Viola was sitting up there, snotting tears on the screen. Phenomenal performance, classic victimization. I mean, you have Moonlight. I mean, just the whole plot of Moonlight is tragic. I mean, the whole plot of Precious is tragic. And that doesn't mean that these stories shouldn't be told, because they should. But the thing about it is that when we think about the corollary to victimization, because that's what I'm talking about, then the corollary to victimization is empowerment. Hidden Figures. Malcolm X. Selma. 13th. And then people say, oh, what about 12 Years a Slave? I mean, Northrop, I mean, he ended up getting out of there. I mean, he ended up doing all of that. Lupita won for having blood and sweat knocked off of her back on 12 Years a Slave. One of the most vicious scenes that people could ever watch on film. So the point of this is this. Oftentimes when black characters in black film are applauded, I mean, we can even look at The Help. I mean, we got to think, I mean, they were housekeepers. I mean, this harkens back to the first African-American to actually win an Oscar, and that was Hattie McDaniel playing Gone with the Wind. Her name was Mammy. I mean, granted, The Help, they superseded that in terms of the level of empowerment they implemented. But it's still part of the trope of victimization, and it's still part of the trope of a white savior film because of the person who told their story. And so part of when we think about this is that normally it's not just about representation. That's part of it. But this gets to the reason why sometimes, governments that have a large representation of African Americans, the reason why things still don't change. Because it could still be part of a victimization approach as it relates to policies, even the people who they put in place who are there to actually maintain the victimization that's in place. And we see that with film. So it's not as simple as an Oscar so white. Instead, it's about magical Negroes and white saviors. Instead, it's about victimization and empowerment. And when there are empowerment roles, these roles of black empowerment, whether they be Ali or Malcolm X, and then people say, oh, what about Ray Charles, with Jamie Foxx? Well, I mean, awesome film. But, I mean, his life was bad. He had a great story. I mean, Ray Charles was amazing in what he was able to do. But if we think about his story, it fits two narratives, victimization, and it also fits magical Negro. I mean, Ray Charles is amazing. I mean, who can do what he could do? And then, of course, black people always winning for music. I mean, whether that be Prince for Purple Rain, who's like my favorite artist. I mean, Lionel Richie. I mean, the list could go on and on about that. I mean, even 3 6 Mafia winning for what they did. I mean, even being from Tennessee, that just I'm not gonna say much about that. I think that the point though is victimization versus empowerment. That there is an added dimension that sociological research tells us becomes important. That the empowerment is what's threatening. The victimization fits continuous stereotypes and tropes about black people that fit existing narratives about what people think black people should be doing and where they should actually be. So kudos to Moonlight. Kudos to Viola Davis. Kudos to Ali. Awesome roles. Awesome films. The point is just to add a layer of complexity for everybody to think about. It's not as simple as Oscar so white in representation. It's about magical Negroes. It's about white saviors in films, like the movie that Sandra Bullock played with the football player. I mean, it was classic white savior, black victimization. Moonlight, classic black victimization. Precious, classic black victimization. Fences, really complex film, but still embedded in victimization. And so, again, and one last point, because this is all about black, white at this point. one of the big things just missing from Hollywood in general. I mean, we just act like that Latinos and Asians just don't exist, right? I mean, now, don't get me wrong. I mean, the film got nominated, Lion got nominated, phenomenal film. But if we think about that film and Slumdog Millionaire, pretty much victimization films. Okay, so I mean, we have to really take it there. It doesn't exclude the film being great. It's about, at the end of the day, what is it intending to kind of put off? And so, again, at the end of the day, conversations matter like Black Lives and Books, and I hope this has sparked one.